Hello guys and welcome to a new Wargame video today by me Vulcan. Today I have for you a 2 versus 2 on Bloody Ridge, and for those of you with a keen eye will see that I am actually in this replay for once, as some of you will be very happy about. So anyway, I'm also joined by Bubblebox, and for those of you who don't know, I did recently do a collaboration with him. Now this collaboration was a deck building video on the Commonwealth deck. Basically, we both talked about what was in our decks, what was good about our units that we picked, and how the Commonwealth deck worked in general. So it's a very informative video on how to build a Commonwealth deck, and if you're interested in that, you can find the link to the video and the link to Bubblebox's channel in the description. Definitely go check it out. It's a very good video as a sort of pretext to this video, where I will be using the same deck that I was talking about to make a very large push during the game. So definitely go check that out. I can't stress enough how much fun I had making that video and how thankful I am for Bubblebox to invite me to do that collaboration with him, because it allowed me to get off my chest a lot of thoughts about the Commonwealth that, you know, I don't necessarily get to cover during my own replays. So anyway, on to this game. I am actually playing against 2 less experienced players today, so I just want to get that out there at the start of the game, just because a lot of you will say that this might be a bit boring, but I think that in general this video is extremely effective showing off what to do with a Commonwealth deck and what kind of maps really suit it. I did play a couple of other games that I'm not necessarily going to put on the channel, but one of them I actually lost against Razman and his friend, 2 more experienced players, and we tried the decks on Wonson Harbour, and I would definitely not recommend that to any Commonwealth players because it really didn't go down very well. Didn't help that I threw out a challenge or 2 and got it blown up at the start of the game, but that's for another time. Anyway, moving on to today's game, we have Bubblebox setting up for a push to India, and he's going to basically contesting at India and pushing up to Echo. Meanwhile, I'm going to be moving to Gulf and capturing Gulf, and then pushing with my 3 push strategy up the middle of the map. Now I know a lot of you will get annoyed that I talk about my 3 push strategy so much, but it is something that is tried and tested all the way back from European escalation. It kind of gets broken down a bit more now because of the introduction of air forces and how powerful they can be, but basically the concept, for those of you who don't know about it, is recon, tanks and anti-aircraft. That's like the 3 things that come in a 3 push. Infantry is sort of a side thing, and yeah, you'll see me build up a composition of units shortly that will really show off the effect it can have, especially using a Commonwealth deck. And I think the Commonwealth deck is possibly the best for this. Now the 3 push strategy is good for crossing open ground and for maps that aren't very confined and aren't going to be choked by towns and so on. So this map is perfect. Bloody Ridge, the map where you've got all this open land in the middle and then the towns on either side. There is of course towns at Hotel and Delta which can stop the pushes from either side, but a lot of the fighting will happen in the middle at Foxtrot or at India at this town. Not much really happens on this right side. So I am going to put it to my point of view. I'll just quickly pause the game and go over the units I'm bringing in at the start. So, as you can see, I have 1 Saxon with, I think these have Gurkha's 90s in them. We've got the 2 Grizzlies with Javelin GLs, and we've got a Saxon there with the Milan 2 squad. I've got an AS-350 Recon helicopter, a Grizzly CP, Lynx AH-7 with Command Infantry, a Challenger 2, followed up by the Challenger Marksman, and we also have an M125A1 mortar carrier for a little bit of fire support. We also have another Grizzly CP there. 3 command units for me at the start of the game, because Bubblebox is going to go ahead and use his Sultan in Juliet and send a Sultan to India as well. Bubblebox actually has 2 Wolverines. These are very fast infrared AA vehicles. He's got a Saxon with some infantry and some Lynx AH1s, probably with his Royal Marines or even the SAS actually. He also has 2 M113 ADATs and a Challenger 1 Mark 1 for his main tank. I'm going a bit more expensive with my Challenger 2. Now, I'm not necessarily going to cover the opposite side because this isn't a competitive replay. We'll just discuss the units as I come across them, like I do in these normally. So, bringing up a couple of extra units already, M113A13050s, and with some infantry, and we've got the Grizzly, another one with a Javelin GL squad. So, we're going to land this Lynx AH1 at the back here, drop off the HQ section. Now the great thing about the Lynx AH7 with the HQ section is that the Lynx AH7 can actually be used throughout the game as fire support, which is great because it has wonderful 30mm or 68mm rockets, sorry, that have 2 HE power, great for tearing apart infantry squads. A crazy smirch barrage, I think that is, at the start of the game, just basically covers their advance onto Charlie. Now again, I have to stress that these are less experienced players, so don't expect anything too crazy from them, but I just thought that this gameplay really shows how a Commonwealth deck should be used to its advantage. So here you can see I've dropped out my infantry into this town, and I'm going to be using the Saxons and Grizzlies, which are both, you know, nice fast vehicles, to push up to Foxtrot and use them as sort of disposable recon. We also have the AS350 moving up as well, and on the left side you can see Bubblebox's SAS taking up the front lines in this town, using the Lynx AH7s to get there really quickly. Wolverines being taken out by the T-64Bs there, but the SAS managing to shoot down a helicopter as well. So looks like Bubblebox has got the left side locked down rather well, and I'm now starting to push up my main forces, which at the moment is just a Challenger 2 and a Challenger Marksman, into this tree line, which I know is not contested because of the Saxons and Grizzlies. I've also brought a Grizzly onto the right side to act as preliminary recon for Gulf, because that is really undefended at the moment. I've obviously got this Grizzly CP that's snuck in the back of there at the start. Pretty risky play because a lot of people, especially in a 3v3, will send helicopters to each other's towns to just probe out at the start. But in this case I got away with it because he wasn't playing very aggressively from Charlie to Golf, and therefore I had time to just get in a couple of units to defend the front of that whilst I focused the majority of my troops into the middle. So a Z9A TY90 being brought across to attack my AS, and I just cut it off with my Challenger Marksman, so that goes down nicely. We've also got my M25A1 actually opening fire onto this town at the frontal sectors to see if we can deal any damage to any infantry that may be there. We've also got my Challenger 2 moving ahead. I'm very surprised at this point that I didn't get targeted by any ASM planes with their AT missiles, but basically I decided to move back once I realised that it was left in the open there. Challenger Marksman wouldn't have really been able to save it should any player have brought in a ASM plane. But anyway, I move forward with this Saxon to find out what's going on with these HGMs being fired at this Grizzly, move back the Grizzly, and move forwards the Saxon, because Saxon was the one being targeted. Grizzly up on the ridge also gets destroyed, but I'm basically watching where the HGMs are coming from, and I use my M125 to actually pin that down. I also stun this Pongay 2, and with it being sat there, the Challenger 2 picks that off nicely with its really good accuracy. Challenger 2 actually having 70% accuracy. You don't even necessarily need to attack move the thing because it has 65% stabilizer as well. I have brought up a Lynx 3 there That is just to support my troops as they move forward. It's got some infrared missiles on it, and we also have the Hellfires there to help against any heavy tanks. Now, I'm not entirely sure what's in here, but I'm trying my best to use the Grizzly to charge up to this hedge line here to find out what is there. And the HGMs aren't showing themselves, so I'm assuming that the HGMs have all been used up. Challenger Marksman just about stuns the Mi-24P before that gets a frontal shot onto it. Wouldn't have destroyed it necessarily, but the Challenger Marksman there getting a kill nonetheless. Challenger 1 managing to blow up the unit that was firing at my Grizzly earlier on, which is nice. Got a wonderful Smirch barrage coming in over the town at Gulf, and not so much a great idea because the majority of units in a town will be infantry and they are never affected by the Smirch barrages. Now here shows exactly the reason why you take a AS-350 over a Gazelle in a Commonwealth deck. That was an infrared missile with 5 HE power, and it took it down to 1 health. And basically, yeah, that's literally it. If that was a Gazelle, it would have been shot down in 1. Lynx 3 there, managing to snipe a UAZ that was fast moved down this road. Always be careful of your units fast moving into weird positions. You already saw a Pongay 2 here come down here and get sniped by the Challenger 2 that wasn't identified by the enemy because of lack of recon. They do finally bring in recon in the form of the Mi-2, but I get rid of it immediately with the Challenger Marksman. So I'm still making a push. I should have really thought about bringing up some more anti-aircraft at this point, because currently I have 3 tanks supported by 1 AA, and that is a terrible, terrible ratio to work by. You probably want 1 AA unit for every significant tank that you have, and for a Challenger 2 that costs so much, you probably even want 2, just so that those pesky HGM planes don't actually kill your Challenger 2 in one shot. Now, the reason I say that is because what will happen is if you don't manage to shoot down any of the HGM planes after the first time they make a pass, is they will almost definitely kill your heavy tank the second time round. So I'm really taking advantage of this at the moment. You can see that I'm using my recon, which was the AS-350. I used that to get the information I needed. Then I pushed up the tanks, and they are supported, of course, by the Challenger Marksman. But now Dencrash is actually trying to counter my tank push with the T-80s here, but as you can see, they are primed to be flanked, so they are all heading straight for my Challenger 2. They haven't been targeted on my Challenger 2 because they are inefficient at that range. I use my gunship I've brought up to stun the T-80s and panic them, and then I flank them with the Leopard AS-1, and that is the perfect use for those tanks. Very good at flanking, actually. I also had the 2 Milan 2 squads here firing HGMs into the front, so you probably saw that happening as well. I'm trying to garrison both my Gurkhas units that were moving up in the M113s. I'm just about to swap these squads around, so the more replenished squads actually fights the Motor Strelky, whilst the fire support from the Challenger continues. Got some more units moving up here. Some more M113s with the Gurkhas moving into position. Challenger Marksman's now going to be moved up because the autocannon from that, the twin radar, is actually very effective against ground infantry squads. So I'm trying to get it into a position where it has line of sight onto these Motor Strelky, but I have to be really careful about these T-90Ss coming down the road. Now, the Motor Strelky there were actually moved out in the open for a split second, and as you can see, they got absolutely ripped apart by the Challenger Marksman. A very good use for them, as long as the Challenger Marksmans can get away with not being destroyed by seed. Now, in this case, the Mi-24Ps come up, and they do manage to get enough HGMs onto my Challenger 2 to destroy it, but if you didn't notice, I already killed off a T-90S with this flanking shot of my Leopards on the side here. Now, what's quite good is that I was originally worried about these smirch barrages, but because the majority of my units, significant units, are now dead, I'm actually, you know, not as affected by the smirch barrage as I would have previously been. Also, in Hotel I actually used an infantry command, so that's also not going to be affected by the smirches. So just to get rid of those Mi-24Ps there, I did manage to use my Javelin GL and the Lynx 3 there to take those down after they did destroy my... Well, the T-90 actually destroyed my Challenger Marksman, and it left my other units completely vulnerable to those helicopters, and that was a massive mistake. I really should have had more Challenger Marksmen. I think one was already on the way at the time. I just didn't really do it quick enough. So anyway, I moved my AS-350 forwards, and you can see I actually spot the CV there in Charlie, and I'm using my mortar to target that immediately. Challenger Marksman, the new one, and the Javelin GL being moved up to take out that Mi-24P. Not really getting much value for money with those at the moment, because obviously I'm shooting them down with this Challenger Marksman, which only cost 70 points, and those wonderful helicopters actually cost 80 points. So the initial barrage from the M125 didn't actually destroy the command, and I actually didn't notice for a while. So I decided to send obviously another barrage over there, and finally we get rid of it. Now what Luca should have done is definitely move that back as soon as he saw it getting mortared. Also, what you can do is as soon as the flashing stops on your unit, it generally means that the enemy can see it. Now another thing I do here, I bring over the Lynx AH7 just to clean up all these Mi-8s. They can be difficult to deal with, especially with those 57mm rocket pods. Another weird thing that happened here was Luca was actually fast moving his units down the road. Now, again, you need to really micromanage these units. I think he was trying to get the Pongays over to Charlie to stop these helicopters, but it just seemed weird that he would put them through the town. Maybe he didn't realize I had enough there, because obviously these Gurkhas are really low, but obviously they still have the AT weapons to work with. Another exceptional recon being brought up and shot down immediately with one shot from the Javelin GL. So not much luck so far for Luca in the center. I haven't really lost anything too significant so far. Obviously the Challenger 2 and a Leopard AS1 got taken out, but that was at the exchange of a T-90S, so generally a fair trade. Now the Challenger Marksman having a fun time shooting down the Mi-8s, trying to take off as the mortar continues to stun them in place. And yeah, as it continues, I've still got more tanks coming up. The Challenger 1 Mark III complemented by the Challenger Marksman, and I've also got the infrared squads of Javelin GLs. Brought up a Chinook here because I feel relatively safe to do so, just to resupply these squads. Over on the left in the meantime, Bubblebox is doing a similar thing, using his ADATs with his Wolverines and the Challengers to make a very nice push through the left side. Could have done with a bit of extra recon further up, but he does have this ferret here, as you can see, for his recon. Could do with a bit more though. Z9A TY90 is being brought up to deal with some of our air support. I think Bubblebox recently showed one of his Lynx 3s, so did I, and the AS-350s, so that would have been reason enough to bring those in, but either way, did get shot down by the ADATs. A T-80 actually being destroyed on the road there, and 3 T-80Bs actually being destroyed on the left side by all of these Challengers that were surrounding them. Now, as you may have seen earlier from me in the center, and also just then from Bubblebox, it's very important to take advantage of flanking shots onto tanks. So in this case, the Challenger 2 was firing from here, and you can see that that's from that direction, whereas he had 3 Challenger 1 Mark 1s in this tree line here. Now, when a tank comes down the middle, they're going to get shot from two sides. One's basically always going to get hit in the side armor, Mi-24P almost doing some serious damage here. These Challenger 1 Mark 1s were very exposed for a second there when he moved them forwards before his AA followed up. But as you can see, Dencrash decides to surrender on the left to Bubblebox. I'm sending this Challenger Marksman up on the right just to finish off these Mi-8Ts that are left out there, and I'm also going to be shooting down all of these helicopters as they are thrown at us. So, as you can see, at the start, all I had was just a Challenger 2 and a Challenger Marksman. But obviously, as you get more points, the push becomes stronger, and now I'm backing it up with these Leopard C2 Mexuses, which are good fire support for something like a Challenger 2. They have the amazing 14 front armor, pose a massive threat to other tanks, and all these tanks supported by the Challenger Marksmen is pretty much perfect. And we're going to be moving forwards. I've also brought up a couple squads of Norforce, which are pretty cheap recon infantry squads, and they're going to be placed in the town and in the tree lines where I need them in order to provide me with any flanking information. But at this point, my AS-350, they're actually spotting a T-90S coming up the road, so I prepare to take on that. Need to get these Grizzlies into the buildings as quickly as possible, or as close as possible. So yeah, anyway, I noticed that there is these motor Strelkies in this building that did start to fire at my M113s. Now the best way to deal with this, especially considering I have so many tanks and all this fire support, is definitely just to drop out the infantry where they are. The motor Strelky will open fire on the infantry even though anything else is out of range, and literally what will happen is all your fire support will just wreck the infantry squad. You can see the motor Strelky there dropping from 30 men to 13 men in 2 seconds. We also had the T-90S actually push all the way forwards, got hit by so many HGMs from these 4 Milan 2 squads that are split into 2 squads of 2s, and yeah, didn't really stand much of a chance. Wasn't quite sure why it got sent up so much farther than it really should have. But I think if Luca was obviously more familiar with the game, he could have posed a bigger threat with obviously the 3 T-90s at his disposal. The third one came from Dencrash actually leaving because the availability gets buffed in his deck. But then you can see I'm just picking off his infantry with the use of the Commando's 90s. The Grizzly moves up and is going to go ahead and take out this UAZ that's sitting at the back of Bravo. Bubblebox is going to try and blow it the hell up with an F-11C, but to no avail as the game actually ends. And as you can see, we both have pretty huge scores at the end, mainly due to the feeding of points to me through the Pongays and the helicopters. But at the end of the day, I think that this replay really showed how to push in general with a Commonwealth deck. Not the best replay, like I said, we did play like 3 games and none of them really showed exactly what I wanted. I really wanted like a closer game with the 3-push strategy coming across. I've done it previously, I think, with an American deck in one of my videos, so I'm sorry about the quality of the replay. Obviously it's not great, but it was more of just a tutorial-esque replay commentary that I felt really complemented the deck building video I did with Bubblebox. So again, please go and check out Bubblebox and the video that I did with him if you haven't watched it already. And yeah, not really much else to say about the game. One thing to mention, don't bring in so many smirchers at the start, because the majority of the time they will miss if you try and guess where the enemy's units are. They can be a good investment in larger team games like 3v3 and 4v4, especially if you have the recon to spot the pushes coming out from the other players. But in a case of a 2v2, and especially on such a wide map, it's not necessarily the best idea. There's so many places I could have been, and it's definitely unlikely that I would have pushed into that town. So yeah, anyway, we caught them out. completely. Me pushing down the middle really just cut off all his fast move attempts, I guess. But not really else much to say. Just really showing off the how-to on pushing with a Commonwealth deck. Yeah. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.